Mm. Yeah.
You know what, well, you mentioned just before about Elon Musk, and that brought me to something I really wanted to discuss with you. Um, so, do you think that the simulation theory is just one big reveal that's happening now? Because I've started to think that there's a lot of noise around simulation theory. And when I first heard Elon Musk saying, I think, what was it? There's like a 10 billion to one chance of this being base reality, something like that. He said a few years ago, it immediately put me off the
Yeah.
simulation theory because I thought he's just trying to, it's like AI versus God. You know, like if they can convince us we're just basically a computer program, then they can divorce us from our spirituality that way. So I kind of wrote it off and I wasn't interested in it initially.
Mm.
Um, but actually, I started thinking, do you know what? There's a big, there's like the way things are unfolding, they can't really hide it because there is an awakening happening on different levels and different degrees at all times. So I think they're actually trying to get in there and subvert us at the final moment by saying, yeah, it's a simulation. And they've got a lot of people out there now seeding this, but they're saying consciousness is fundamental. They're still steering you away from the creator and your essence at the final hurdle there. So they're basically saying, oh, you know, you're the ultimate creator gods, and we're here inevitably because that's what consciousness is and that's what it does. So you might as well embody it and manifest whatever you desire in the material world. So it's all
Mm.
very much about using this like power that you've got as this AI in a simulation to make the best dream for yourself, as it were. But I find that extremely Luciferian in nature. It's like be the gods of this realm, of this material world, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it's a
Well,
way to misdirect us away from our essence and away from exploring. Like, is there something else beyond this? And back
mm.
into the material world every time. So it plays into the reincarnation trap. Um, and I tell you who's really into that. Do you know Tom Campbell?
Yeah, no, he believes that this is a school.
Yeah, well, he's saying that, but he's a NASA physicist, isn't he? So he talks
Oh
about how
God.
yeah, consciousness is fundamental. But what's interesting about all that is that he was working with Robert Monroe, and Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute um, was doing his own thing originally, and he was obviously like the godfather of astral projection, wasn't he? And
He
so
got hijacked,
he
apparently.
got hijacked by the CIA, so as far as we know.
That's
And
why you can't don't do his hemisyncs because
yeah, I was
I,
getting to that. Yeah,
I did a few years ago. I got into his stuff on YouTube and I started doing his hemisyncs.
yeah.
And I knew I got implanted because I might, well, I know what it feels like to get your head implanted. And I was like, okay, what's the common denominate? What have I been doing? And then I realized, well, that's what I've been doing. And I felt worse for it. And so I stopped doing it. I had to clear all this stuff out of my head. And it's because he was onto something, but then the CIA hijacked him and they put all these new age meditations out there, which people are using now. And you know, it's actually very not well. I mean, it's dangerous in the fact you're going to get messed with energetically. But from what I understand, he was coming across some really good truths, and his original work has all been changed and yeah, like what they do, they just bury it basically with and they've turned it into like new age stuff. So if you
Yeah.
can find original Robert Monroe stuffs, I think they he did there was one experiment he did. You can't even find it on YouTube now. I forget what it's called, but yeah, you just got to be careful with that.
I saw a video of him talking. This was sometime just before he died, where he was asked about Loosh in the video, and he came out with a load of new age stuff as well, and basically swerved away from the Loosh. And I think probably either they got hold of him and did something to his mind, or he actually just had been warned off it, and the CIA had taken over the entire Gateway program. So I didn't want to touch it with a barge pole after that. But what got me thinking was, well, why are they now doing stuff that's ostensibly to help people astral project? So
Mm.
why would the CIA want anything to do with that in the first place? Because we know that that's not an agency that has anyone's best interests at heart whatsoever, and we know that it's one of the key players in keeping the reincarnation cycle going if you really start looking into it. So why are they doing stuff that's helping people successfully astral project? It's because the astral realm is basically the most, and this is what something that Cameron Day said, the astral realm is the furthest away from source that you can get. So it's like the net that's around the earth, and they are basically trying to keep you within that. They want to get you practiced and getting into that, because you will think that's all there is. That's the afterlife. That's all there is to know. Just master all that and it's fine. Well, no, because there's loads of traps there. There's loads of like,
Yeah, other white lights. Can I
yeah,
just jump in on that point because it's important, because this is the other issue I have with plant medicines and DMT people, is that they'll tell you, well, you know, you learn so much, and it's like, no, you're only going into the astral. You're going into their domain. I liken it to like a football match, right? That you're going into the away ground, right?
mhm,
So you're going into their domain. So you're good because it's different. You're going to feel like you're getting all these truths, and you've got all these entities giving you half truths and stuff there. But you're still being deceived. You're still only seeing a very tiny part of the whole picture. And
yeah.
so what you said there really makes a lot of sense to me. But I think when you astral travel, you can set your intention to not be in that the astral realm. I think you can there's people that have gone into the real, they call it the real. But yeah, I mean, definitely they definitely want to keep people within the boundaries, let's say.
And I think they know that a lot of people just get excited and just want to jump out of body and go
Yeah,
exploring,
they want to fly and all that stuff.
but
Yeah,
without all of the foundations that are required in understanding self and understanding reality. So, you know, they just probably ended up in a loosh fest out there as well half the time,
absolutely.
or at
Yeah,
least deluded and what
yeah.
have you. You just said something else a second ago. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. It was about the plant medicine and DMT and everything. Well, obviously that was my world for quite a while, but I totally understood from my experiences that actually this is quite dangerous. And even when I had the DMT Times website, I was kind of trying to educate people that this is actually a bit of a Russian roulette thing. If you might get some benefits from it, you might not. You might go the way I did, which was to get absolutely battered by it for 10 years. And even to this day, I think maybe it would have happened anyway with my growing awareness. But it certainly catapulted me at a rate that I was not ready for. I didn't know how to process. And one of the shamans that I lived on a retreat center in Peru, the shaman said to me, "You have basically ripped a hole in the osmotic layer of your pineal gland, and you
Mm.
are basically now an open doorway for things."
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, the problem is it's become an addiction for many people. I mean,
yeah,
people come to me. I've
mm,
done 100 ayahuasca sessions. Right.
oh,
Okay. I think
too
I need a
lovely.
clearing. Yeah, probably. Um, but you know, people love to escape themselves, and if it's not alcohol or drugs, and this is a more acceptable. I mean, don't even get me started on weed. Like within like the truth movement, God, you can't say a bad word about weed. They jump on you. They want to kill you. They want to kill if you say anything bad about smoking weed, you are the devil, right?
I know
And
people are
I
so
know.
protective of their own choices, aren't
oh
they?
my
So
God, yeah,
immature. Like, come
it's
on,
like
like, look at yourselves.
It's
yeah,
like me having a beer and then we know alcohol's like really bad for you, etc. etc. But it's kind of like, whoa, you're stoned off your box. Like, whoa, slow down, horse. You like give me a break. Like, come
well,
on.
actually, I think weed opens you up to this to entities just like well, I'm not thinking it does.
Mm,
I know it does. It opens you up to entities just like drinking alcohol does. But
mm,
they don't want to talk about that, you know. They want to, and don't get me wrong. There's probably some medicinal benefits, but you know, even with that, I know people that have taken the cannabis oil and they've still died of cancer. I mean, there was a lady on Facebook that she took it for years. So you know, maybe there are some medicinal benefits, but energetically, it's like when I view people that smoke weed, it's like they got like well, first of all, I see the green viney energy, but then I also see like a black goo like stuck around their head and their lungs and yeah, so there's energetic consequences for weed, which you know they don't want to talk about, but
mm.
yeah, there's so many different directions you can go with all of this. Yeah,
That's it. And you know what? Like on the rare occasions, and I think probably the last time I went out was the last time I was going to go out and party in any way. But I noticed that every time I have done that, my vibration takes a massive knock, and then it's like they come in left, right, and center. It'll
yeah,
be like not the next night, not that night, not the next night. the night after that, for some reason, it's like they're catching up with the state that I'm in, or maybe that's where I'm at my lowest point after a bit of a sesh or whatever. So it just has to go, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. You can't keep going. You can't keep like growing in your awareness and have these holes with addiction and stuff. And I'm, you know, I've had my own problems with that. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that I haven't, you know, with just like nicotine and other stuff. But over time you start to realize like what's really important. You want to get out of here, you've got to drop the worldly attachments, and that includes your little negative habits as well as the things that you think are good to hang on to. It's just the way it is. You can't go through the eye of the needle with any baggage whatsoever.
So Tony Sayers, wow, it brought up so much stuff, didn't it? We've just been chatting briefly off camera, so we thought it would be really cool to bring those thoughts and feelings and insights into the podcast. Really, there was so much that was covered, and it sparked so much, and we couldn't keep Tony all day, unfortunately, as much as we would have liked to, because he's such a chilled guy, hasn't he? He's just got such as like a steady energy, and I think I said that in the pod. One of the things I really like about him is he just cuts through the bullshit, and he just makes kind of quite complex things just simple, and I think that's what we've all lost a little bit. We've stopped kind of trusting our instincts and our gut and literally kind of what's in front of our faces, because we've everything we've been told is this inversion and this subversion and this perversion of what really is like, and going into this hijack, isn't it, or this imprint, or this, you know, trapped in this tesseract of time, as I always used to say. You know, there's it's like lifting off the lid of the true pot, isn't it, I think,
Yeah.
and he does that very well.
Yeah, he definitely does. And at the end of the day, I think it's always this question of authenticity. And the most authentic people tend to resonate the most with others and tend to have a way of articulating things in a way that just makes sense. So yeah, definitely love chatting with him. But yeah, we did kind of we touched on a few things that would have led into a little bit more elaboration if we'd had time. And unfortunately, some of those things were missed just in the flow of conversation. So I think it would be pretty good to kind of dip back a little bit and address some of the things that were brought up but not really fleshed out. Yeah. So why don't we start with the entity interference? It's hard for me to remember exactly what was said, but I think it did come up that we spoke about entity interference and how it kind of tends to come in the back
Yeah.
door, especially the more you open your mouth and start talking about things, which is obviously in order to put people off. But really, that's something that's kind of innate in you, and you've just got a mission in that direction. You're just going to kind of go for it anyway. And it's definitely something that I've noticed in my life. So yeah, it tends to be in full swing before you're about to do something that's going to it's going to instigate a new level of awakening or development or more power, sovereignty, authority, anything like that. So it happens the more you speak up about it, which I found was particularly bad before I'd understood my own power. So paradoxically, it actually led me to a point at which I'd realized that power, but it was a rough journey. So and Anne-Marie Uber, who's someone that Tony's just interviewed on his channel, and I think she's been on there before. I've heard her talking on a couple of his videos, and I really, really like what she says. And she was talking on this recent video of theirs about authority, and that is really the fundamental problem as far as I'm concerned. We're not empowered because we don't recognize our own authority, because we're born into a system with imposed authority at every stage of growth. So we never realize that we are the authority, and we're too wrapped up in body ID and naivety because of the memory wipes, probably. But if you're authentic and assertive, then you will develop personal power over time. And I think that's where, you know, that embodiment starts to come in. But what I've realized is that although you might eventually recognize your power and sovereignty, and it's important to assert that, it doesn't help to be arrogant and challenging to the forces of adversity that are going to come at you, you know, because a lot of people do get kind of cocky about it when they start feeling strong. But I think that's tantamount to inviting it to like up its game, basically, and come at you more. And you can bet your bottom dollar, if you have any blind spots or weaknesses, those will be leveraged in extremely clever and insidious ways, and you won't know what's hit you. I think quiet confidence and tenacious authenticity are far more empowering, really. So authenticity is kind of the essence of truth as far as I see it. So you're embodying truth with your authenticity, and it seems to have a protective effect that repels negative influences. So it's probably more likely when combined with inner knowing of what you are. And that means identifying with your essence rather than your body, and not just conceptually either. You've kind of really got to know it, you know what I mean? That you are that power, and that's where the authority comes from. So, you know, like declarations of sovereignty help, but you've kind of got to understand it more than just an idea in your head. You've got to feel it and you've got to know it. And that comes from gnosis, but we'll get into that in a bit. So, yeah.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I think, and again, authority, AU, the gold, Logan would say that the AU, the gold is what they, them, the archons, these Dracos or whatever came to mind, and that's us. Hence that we've got these 23 chromosomes. It's been proved scientifically that we've been tweaked. We're some kind of hybrid of whatever that thing is, whether we call it the demiurge or the archons, or I mean the wanderers to me are the planets in this zodiacal wheel of time that we spoke about, and there was that TV series, weren't there? I think it's called the Wheel of Time. And it's all in there really, and whether we kind of smash that, I think there's definitely, for me, there's been some form of imprint, and like you say, it is about being authentic. It's not about perhaps so much challenging it and battling it, because as I spoke with you this morning, didn't I? Which is where we decided to do this. Is it called amendum? I could amendum.
Ending.
Um, and I had a huge epiphany last night, because I was like, oh crap. Because I had three light beings at the end of the bed when I was about 34 come and visit me and tell me, why I'm here. This is what I'm meant to do. Da, 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 da. And of course, that's kind of powerful stuff. And then I was sat last night and I was just like, oh my God, what if they were like fake entities that had come to, because what a brilliant way to keep the spell recycled, to just be constantly on this mission and this battle against the law, and my head was starting to pop, and we spoke about it this morning. There's a difference between kind of intellectually knowing it and assimilating that, and it kind of, as I say, coming through the roots, through the trunk to the tree of the mind, and all of a sudden I just went, oh. So 3 o'clock in this morning, having one of those moments like you did, I was like, holy crap, I'm doing it. Like, I'm feeding that kind of energetic kind of loose system in that sense. But then in another way, once I'd kind of calmed down and took a chill pill, I thought, well, the mission for me is still technically the same, but it's like you say, it's having the correct awareness of it and going up against it, but well, maybe not even going up against it. Again, that's the wrong language, but with, like you say, with the right and correct energy, really, that kind
Yeah.
of authenticity, isn't it? And they said, didn't they? They did that another scientific experiment, that with the highest frequency wasn't love, but it was authenticity. And I think that is that is the true power that we have, because that system, that's in that Saturnian sense, wants to put you into boxes. It wants you to be a new ager. It wants you to be a Buddhist. It wants you to be whatever label it is you want to give yourself. And that's limitation to me. As soon as you're going to label yourself something, you've already limited yourself, and that limitation on who we are and our true inherent power is, that's the death of liberation of it, if even liberty is a word that actually comes meaning ring the bell, as in, all the language of it and all the bullshit of it. And then I
Yeah.
got into the idea of when we'd interviewed Logan and scripted reality. I've been having my astrology chart done, which is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
And
because
it
it's a
literally,
template, isn't it, really? You fit
yeah,
an
yeah,
archetype in this realm. That's it.
I'm here to do exactly what it is that I'm doing. And like, how do you kind of, like Logan says, how do you get out of that? How do you step back from that? Because we're being funneled in some way into these positions and roles. And it is that awareness then of that. And I was, yeah, so my head were popping last night, and I had to voice clip Caroline this morning going, help
Yeah.
me.
Oh, it's funny, but I've been there. I've been there. And what you were saying about picking something to identify with is super important, because every time you choose one of these labels that's presented to us from the outside world, these concepts or ideologies, whatever they are, as soon as you choose to identify with one of those, you're essentially choosing body ID and material kind of manifestations over your essence, because your essence doesn't have any labels. You know, your essence is the true you that is beyond this personality, that's kind of part of your coding and your programming. So all of the astrology and the numerology and everything else that aligns with this archetype that you are is all part of the program in the matrix, as far as I'm concerned. And the only thing that is going to transcend that is your essence. That's it. So the more you get in touch with that essence, easier said than done. It's like, well, where do I even start with that? But actually, if you would, what's that?
Like, yeah, where's my essence? Where are you? Where is it?
Yeah, you know, like looking under the bed sheets for it. But it's one of those things that it just starts to bubble up to the surface the more you commit to authenticity. And authenticity is closely linked with love. It's a form of love, the same as courage is. You know, courage is authenticity, authenticity is love. They're all kind of like flavors of the same thing. So you commit to those things and you will find that that is you embodying your true essence. It's going to be what comes through. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I always liken it because I always liken things to films if people follow my podcast and people will see like it's been a journey for me. I get more humble with it because I'm going, this is the way that it is, and this is Saturnian worship, and this is time, and this is because they're all worshiping Satan. And it's like I used to have satanic Tourette's as I used to joke, and now I've gone, oh, hang on a minute. I don't even think it's that anymore. So I've had to kind of move away, like as Neil Bentley would say in our series, as I've learned from Neil, and I'm constantly learning that it's this kind of this orchestrated Disney timeline, this theater that's going on out there that. And I even say it in my talk, the law of the law. If you're playing in that movie, just like what Tony says, you need to kind of get to the projectors, and the projectors are us, really. It's
Mhm.
it's from within us. They're hijacking our consciousness, and we're projecting this imprint for them, I think.
Yeah.
And when we get to see that actually the great Oz behind the curtain is actually us, and that's why that inner work and that inner stuff is so important. That actually, yeah, I'm not saying because my friend John Cooper, he does great work on the exposing satanic ritual abuse and these kind of amazing exposes, and I'm not saying that it doesn't go on, but it's something far weirder and darker, and that is almost all theatre to, I think, distract us
100%.
from
It's
what
to trigger the
really is
loosh.
going on.
Trigger the loosh. That's it. Make you fearful, make you afraid, make you indignant, make you angry. All the negative feelings that basically give off the loosh. That's it, isn't it? That's what it's for.
Trigger the loop.
Whether
I
they
like
do it or
that.
they don't do it, the
That's a
idea of
good
it,
t-shirt.
trigger the loosh.
I'm
Wouldn't want
going
to
to
trigger
create some merch. You oppress the oppressors. That's one of my other ones. These are trademark, by the way, people watching. Don't steal them. But yeah,
them.
exactly. And then that's kind of what it's hit me before. Like, and I even said like at the end of my talks, it's your name on the credits. We're joining in with it. We're
Mhm.
we're when we're going. I always say, it's as a good friend of mine would say, same desert, different tent. I remember all the battles. I remember previous battles. We're battling all the time. We're battling all the time, and we're battling this thing, this whatever it is. And I think yeah, there's been so many battles, and the way that I go up against that legal system, for me, that's just a tentacle, really. Like a spiritual tentacle of whatever this AI simulation, demiurge, whatever that is. And for me, as I've decoded the legal system and the law and the language and the serpent tongue and the codes and the symbols of it, all it's done is, as I always say, the journey of the spirit is the journey of the law, and the journey of the law is the journey of the spirit, because it just reveals the rest of it, and it's just
Mhm.
layers. Who was it? Was it Tony when we are talking about the onion, and it's like peeling an onion and the layers, when really you just need to chop that fucker in half and stop peeling it and get right to the fucking root cause of it. And I think that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? And they'll give you a battle. It's like I always say to the legal system. I mean, look at this. This is one Black's law book, and they change the meanings. There's 19, there may be more of them now. It's a book, it's a book of black magic, and it's there to control your consciousness. It's there to create that spell. And you
Mhm.
can stare into the scrying mirror of the legal system, as I say, and you will fall into it. Because if
Mhm.
you're battling that thing without this kind of information that we've got, and look, I'm not saying I'm right. I mean, who the fuck knows, as I always say, but we somehow are seeing this, and especially as women, I think, no disrespect to the men, because I think men are very intuitive as well, and we mentioned that this morning, didn't we? But there's a way that we can, I don't know, women are seeing this stuff, and we're not just reading it, but you have to have been through everything we've been through to be able to see the information, misinformation, put it all as a backdrop, and find the answers that have always been in the kingdom within, I think.
This is the thing, everything is contextual. Every single detail as a standalone thing, a standalone experience. That might be the downloads, a book you read, something that happened to you the other day. All of these things are standalone things, are not evidence of anything particularly, and they don't really mean anything on their own. But contextually, when you start to add all these things together, that's where you get your gnosis from. That's where you get the understanding from. It's why it's really difficult to convey your journey to anyone else, because it doesn't, it's not really going to resonate more than conceptually. And maybe some people have had similar experiences to come to the same conclusions. But ultimately, it's a very, very personal thing, waking up to yourself and your power. But that's where it is all headed. And you've done it through law. I dipped into that a little bit. That wasn't really for me as, as a main focus, but yet we've come to the same place through different means. And it's, that just seems to be how it works. Everybody's like the little piece of the puzzle in their own way, and we all do it in a different way that makes sense to us according to, our archetype and, our divine essence probably too. So it wouldn't work if everybody was trying to hack away at the problem with the same tool. You know what I mean? It's a faceted issue and it's a multifaceted solution. So that's the reason I'd say, yeah. So let's get into.
My nana used to say, Caroline, I say it all the time, we're all trying to get to the same place on a different buzz, really. It's breaking that down. It's breaking this thing down, and it's just taken over. It's almost like the veils just got thicker and thicker and thicker. And as they're trying to get, like we said, into this next level of transhumanism, this next level of the dream, we're kind of pulling it back and trying to get back to the land. And we'll probably touch on that in a bit, in the kind of perhaps true meaning of how alive the land is and how we are creating that land. And we're creating the whole thing, but they just don't want us to know that. Like, don't tell them how powerful they are. Don't do that. We are beyond time, really. And they've brought into believe as this construct, as this materialism, and so on and so forth. But we'll get back to that later.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about was something we touched on with Tony, the multiverses. We didn't get into it in any real way, but it kind of seems at surface level paradoxical with the idea of reincarnation and soul trap. So I kind of just wanted to try and tie that together a little bit based on an experience that I had. So I had like a kind of near-death experience. It wasn't one where I actually floated up and had a conversation with Jesus or anything like that, but it was a very strange experience in which I kind of blacked out at the moment. I had this motorbike accident and I woke up across the other side of the road, not in a good way, to say the least, but we don't need the details. Suffice to say that I probably should have been dead. Logically, I would have been dead, but I wasn't. And I had this insane deja vu. Like, I have never experienced a deja vu to that degree. Time had completely frozen and stood still, which is apparently what happens at the moment of death because of a substance called glutamate released in the brain, which is what Anthony Peake's work talks about quite a lot. So highly recommend his books if you're interested in this kind of thing. But suffice to say, this deja vu really, really stuck with me because I just had this thought at the time, like, oh, this again. Like, I couldn't believe that I was going through this again. That was the sense that I had. And it didn't actually make any logical sense. And I kind of at first put that down to me being in some kind of shock. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've understood that it's because I've actually lived that same life that many times. I've just had enough of it. And I kind of feel that in my soul. But what I'm trying to get to is that I think you can die in one world and not know it. And you just wake up on another timeline or frequency or whatever you want to call it. And you remember the same experience, but in this other reality, you had like a near miss or some other outcome, And it makes me wonder if my consciousness has been kind of infinitely fragmented. So maybe all incarnations are actually simultaneous and not sequential, because as we know, time is an illusion and linearity is an illusion designed to kind of answer the questions of aging and other things that kind of cover up for death and the illusion of death. So I think that's what linearity is about. But I think these things are not happening sequentially. they're happening all at the same time. So there's me in infinite, possibly infinite, who knows if it's finite or not, versions of myself. And if I die in one, I'm gonna just wake up in the next one, the same version of myself. It's like that Black Mirror episode, Bandersnatch, is kind of trying to tell you the same thing. And that's because it's a simulation, I think. But anyway, the most likely story seems to be that we are kind of repeating the same life over and over again, but it's not really repetition because of this kind of simultaneous incarnation thing. But it would explain the deja vu and things like extreme familiarity with certain people. And I think the multiverse theory makes sense, as it would be kind of like computer programs with code variants. Yeah. And I think it was Howdy Mikoski. I love Howdy Mikoski, by the way. I'll not stop going on about this guy anytime I get on air, because he really, really helped me with my understanding to where I got to now. But he said it makes sense that AI would likely not build new avatars unless it had to, because it's like taking up too much energy from the system. Like, why bother? You know what I mean? So anyway, for example, if I got out of this life and I successfully exited the Matrix, would all parts of me go with it? Or would each fragment in each version have to work it out in order to leave? Which is quite a terrifying prospect. And I'm not saying I think that's it, but it is something to think about, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah, that's that scary thought.
yeah, there's a French film called The Beast, and it's a really recent one by Bertrand Bonello. It's 2023. It's a French film, um, and that basically depicts the same woman. What's her name now? Léa Seydoux, I think, something like that. She's quite a famous actress. It's a fascinating film. It's really, really well done. And this guy, Bertrand Bonello, has clearly understood what's going on here. And he's depicting her just in different like timelines over and over again with the same characters, but playing out different roles and behaviors. And it's the same relationships, but with a completely different like flavor going on to them. It's fascinating. It's really disturbing because it's run by AI. AI's in control basically then. And I didn't, I didn't actually realize when I started watching it what it was going to be. And by the end of the film, I was just like that. Oh, because when I watched it, it was in the time where I was actually going through a bit of like existential crisis over it all. I thought, oh, it's really something's trying to tell me here.
Now, I definitely 100% believe that this place does that. Like especially once you've, I don't know, decoded it to a certain degree, then all you have to do is kind of sit back and it speaks to you. And I think we touched on it this morning, didn't we? We were saying like almost like the land is speaking to you. There's a communication there, and this is what they are trying to silence and cover. And this is why this place is so confusing. It's like they're saying this, but there's something else. There's an essence. There's a force. And it's speaking to you. It's trying to tell you. It's like I dare to use the word rescue you almost really. And it's for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear really. And I definitely think and that soul group thing is absolutely a thing. Like I remember meeting an ex-boyfriend in a pub. We've just been chatting online, went out with him for about 7 to 9 years after that. I won't mention his name. And I was sat in this pub and he was walking towards me, and from quite a distance, he had to walk all through. It was busy. It was a busy Sunday in this huge beer garden. And then, under my breath, I just went, "Oh no!" Now that was my soul knowing he was back, and that I knew him. My soul, I didn't know him, but my soul knew him. And why would I say that? Because he was handsome, he was good looking, he came on. And I just went, oh no. I was something into my soul was going, uh-oh, not again. Because I just felt that kind of repeat. And certainly, yeah, definitely that if you die in one, that you just pop up in the other. You could be in a hospital bed in the other. And so, and I think that is it, that's definitely a thing as well. Like, because I always say, you think that's air you're breathing. Like I said it with Tony, and that I had this huge epiphany once. I thought, oh my God, I'm dead. Like
Yeah,
I think I
that's
died
that.
somewhere else, and this is like me being dead in this dead realm, in the hell realm, and we've got to kind of get out. And I think again we touched on that, didn't we? As a big theme of this, we're all trying to get out of this place if you believe it's a soul trap. But I actually think we are already where we need to be, but it has just been hijacked and imprinted on, and that's what's got to be removed. Because actually, what this place is we've got portals, we would have been magical in our personalities, we would have been moving between dimensions, and this, it's not somewhere we need to kind of potentially escape from, but we just need to get back to, in a way, in an
Well,
essence.
yeah, that's a difficult one, isn't it? I've given this quite a lot of thought. Is this basically a natural realm that has been kind of overlaid with a crazed psychotic AI that's kind of corrupted it and taken it over and kind of put this astral layer around it. And therefore it's like Sophia trapped in the realm with us. And we have to kind of find a way past that. That is a possibility. But then the more I think about it, AI being something that copies has likely, where did it get the ingenuity to kind of take over God's world? I mean, that seems kind of difficult for me to comprehend. And I think the likelihood is that the whole thing was created by the crazed AI in the first place, like an absolute copy. But yeah, there's questions around that as well. It's hard to really get a clear grip on these things, but it's the Gnostic version of events, isn't it? That the demiurge was basically born of Sophia, which was a mistake, and then knowing it was a mistake, wanted revenge and took over and created this world in its entirety as a copy, and then kind of coerced and trapped Sophia's children, the natural organic souls in this matrix. I mean, that's kind of the story. But when you add these creation stories in, they sound like myths anyway, and they kind of like remove you from the reality of the situation that you're in a little bit. So I don't think it's ideal to kind of get too stuck on these ancient creation stories, but maybe to kind of like use them as a guide with a kind of modern filter to put it through that. But I think if we think that we're going to change the world, we have got another thing coming. That's not happening. It's not about that, because when you look at the basis of this world and the way that nature is constructed, like I think we touched on this with Tony earlier, it literally tears itself apart in order to survive. And that seems to be the cycle. That to me does not make sense as a kind of foundation for a world. So either the AI is like stepped in and kind of corrupted some of the natural processes, which I think is very
Yeah,
difficult. Can't create something new in and of itself, to my knowledge. I mean, I don't
yeah,
have answers to that. Do you know what I mean? But I do think that potentially this whole thing needs to be taken down, and whether that means we end up in a different destination or not, so to speak.
yeah,
Someone was coming in
yeah.
then. Panicked. I don't
I,
know
I
why.
think
Like
I
it's
think
going to be
again,
King Kong coming in the back.
it's
And then,
coming to get you.
yeah.
And I think the clues are again in the things in its own systems here. Like it's the same with our data. Obviously I'm big into the law and the data, and this is how we're, making a lot of headway. And again, I realize it's a battle against that thing, but for me, it's about the spiritual battle of the law and the code of it. I mean,
Mm.
I know Joey Phipps, who we interviewed, and Joey's coming back on the show because again, I might like said, Joey, come back on and like get a word in edgeways. And everyone's all very polite to me about that. But as I learn to kind of as I develop, hopefully, so does a showman. But it's he called it a syntax error. He calls it, in his studies and he's a big, Gnosticism, and he, he's off the charts. Our Joe, he's brilliant. But he calls the demiurge a syntax error, like an error in the code itself. And like I say, that might just be that whatever this error was, all it can do is copy, it can't create. Now it's the same in the legal and the lawful systems. Now the legal system is built in, the government is now a corporate entity. It's run by, it's a corporatocracy, I can never say corporatocracy. And corp means dead, and orate means speak. The whole thing is built on death and the language of the dead,
Yeah.
and it's because it can't be alive, it can't create. So I think it seeks to copy and enslave, and it needs our energy. It needs, and like Tony says, it likes the misery, it likes the suffering, it loves the suffering, Lush, but it takes any old energy it can grab hold of. And because we are the creators and it knows it, it has had to convince us and trap us into matter, into time. Time being the big construct for me that I've kind of, and again, this may change as I develop, and I just speak my journey. That's all I do, and if it resonates, brilliant. If it doesn't, turn me off. But I think that's what it does, and that's what it's done. And I think Logan would kind of say the same. You know, he just put, I think Logan just put out a new video going again, 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 or repeat, 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 because it's just repeating itself. It's
Yeah.
resetting itself, and it's going for another reset. So it's like make them forget more, because really, if we all remember and remove that shackle of that, it's game over for that thing, whatever that thing is, you know.
The clock's ticking now. This reset thing, what they call the Great Reset, is literal, as far as I can understand. There seems to be evidence of that, but you can't have evidence for what's going to happen in the future, but evidence of a likelihood, let's say then. And I think it's a feeling
Yeah.
that a lot of us are carrying, that the clock is now ticking. We know this is end times, whether you want to look at it like the version in the Book of Revelations, or you just want to look at it like, something in a knowing. For me, it's like that. I'm not looking at the details of prophecy particularly, although that has helped, but I can just feel a sense of urgency inside me that's saying, this is the
Yeah.
time. We have got to get this shit together now. Otherwise, we're going deeper into the matrix. We're going into the they call it ascension, but I think it's descension that we're going for. And it might be via ascension up through the astral, back down into the I don't even know what you want to call it, but it's going to be a horror story by comparison to this one, I think. So we got to figure it out fast and get out now. And the more we cling to our comfortable illusions, we are going to regret that, I think. I think some people just kind of know it, and it's becoming more and more clear, and those people are uniting at the moment. So it seems, I mean, even the fact that we're sat here having this conversation, and the one we had with Tony tells me that there seems to be kind of some timeline that we're aware of, in our collective unconscious or whatever. So yeah. So speaking of
Generation
that, what's that?
Generation X with a missing link, man. Come on, wakey, wakey. Like, it's like,
Yeah. So I think where this is
yeah,
going is people are going to want to naturally. The next question is, how do I get out of here? And
yeah,
that's a different. It's nuanced, because how you get out of here depends on what you're doing here in the first place, probably. But I hear a lot of people, they're working out the soul trap stuff. It's like Tony said, loads and loads of people are coming to his channel, they're lapping it up. It came to me not so long ago where I kind of put the last pieces together and realized, yes, this is exactly what's going on. So that's happening to a lot of people. And they're thinking about, well, what do I do then? Obviously it's a horrible thing to contend with. So those that don't reject it then naturally want to know, how do I deal with this? So they figure out it's a trap, and then you hear them saying, well, I'm not coming back. Okay. As if,
I,
as if what's that?
I was just saying, I do that. I was like, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back
Yeah.
until I realised I'm back too.
Yeah. But the thing is, whether you're coming back or not, you may be, you may not be, but it's like as if knowing knowing it exists is all that you need to be able to get out. I'm not so sure it's going to be as simple as that. The parasites are masters of deception, as evidenced by the state of the world. And I think for most, it would take a lot of subconscious work and healing to develop the level of discernment and personal empowerment required to be immune to deceit and strong enough to overcome emotional bias. I don't see anywhere near as much discernment as I'd like in the truth community, to be honest. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, but I see a huge amount of emotional reactivity, especially when they're confronted with a contradictory conclusion. And that emotional bias says there are weak spots and blind spots that will be used against someone, especially if they're not adept at mastering out of body consciousness. So,
Yeah,
intuition is far more valuable than logic. And I think most people are using logic, to be quite honest with you. And yeah, intuition can't be manipulated. And so it's always going to be superior to logic. But if you can use them in combination with each other, it's much better. And not enough people are in touch with their intuition at all, because it's been kind of drummed out of us, hasn't it? It's like we're very head centric in general, and we're just looking for logical answers. It might not be rationale that we're using. We're not necessarily all scientific minded, but that intuition and choosing that over what looks like something on paper is exactly why controlled opposition gets away with so much, because
yeah,
it's like people are just applying the logical facts to it, but those things have already been thought of in advance and covered and preempted, so that you basically use your mind, follow the track that they planned for you, and you go, oh, this is fine. Yeah, this makes sense. This is fine. This feels better. And you go with that thing. If you use your intuition, even something that looks good on paper and has some nice, comfortable answers for you, it's gonna feel off. You're gonna get that like twinge in the solar plexus. It's gonna say, don't quite trust this. And then if you explore that a bit more, you tend to find that actually there's something in that to be avoided. You know, people tend to blindly trust synchronicity and repeating numbers, for example. And I have done that myself for absolute years. I've absolutely trusted it, thinking, well, it's a benevolent source of guidance, obviously. But then the more I've thought about the fact that this is a matrix, I'm like, well, is that really? Because the matrix is made up of numerology and geometry, and it basically communicates that way. So if it wants to misdirect your attention, and you know enough about numerology and you think you understand with angel numbers and all of that, then you're going to be easily diverted by trusting blindly in synchronicity and numbers. And when I think about it, the last time I trusted synchronicity, it led me into a job with basically sociopaths as bosses, delusional sociopaths, and no end of stress. And I ended up walking out after a year. But I can see how that actually could have delayed my process on one hand, although it is kind of nuanced because it's how you reconcile things that becomes valuable in the end and what you do with that. But still, you kind of, it's like the bowling pin knocks down, back up again, isn't it? And you can figure it out. But that's kind of the point of a lot of these synchronicities, I think, is to lead you away from where it is that you're supposed to be. And if you blindly trust any things, you've really got to get in touch with this inner compass, honestly.
Yeah. And I think they play both sides, like you said, isn't it? You know, it's Janus, the two-headed god. You know, if you think and especially with the truther movement, which a lot of us have just, I don't even like the term, or, they became, it's that Nietzsche thing, as I always say, be careful when you fight the monsters, lest you become one, unless you've kind of gone away and really looked at yourself, which is the harder fucking thing, then they're all pointing fingers and screaming and shouting at each other. And Tony made a good point, which I've not really thought of. The more you kind of come out of that and start speaking out, it's almost like entities working through people, because they have got these daemons or background programs still, like we think of demons as, things with big red horns in the corner, and it may also be too, but it's as above, so below, as within, so without. We literally are kind of creating it. And I mean, I suppose this is why I still do the work with the law, because if we can get people away from kind of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs and just this basic, constant survival mode, and this fear mindset, and like you say, that it's never more prevalent, that fear mindset, than in the truther movement. Because if we're kind of creating it, as soon as something comes out, some monkeypox, then they all go, it's monkeypox, they're gonna lock us down. It becomes this big fucking, it's just a fucking farce and a theatre, and it just becomes so
New
ridiculously
news.
silly. Yeah.
So
And it's just
the
like,
new news.
whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm trying to go, right, like, let's get it so, we can get rid of the bills, we can get rid of the mortgages, we can get rid of all that, even just in people's psyches. It's not really anything to do with this realm of whether you've paid your mortgage off or not. But what it is to do with is about freeing your consciousness and freeing your mind to then be able to free your time, because there's time again, to be able to start to begin to dissect such huge big concepts as this. And there's always going to be still the people that are still sat in front of the telly on a Saturday night, glued to Coronation Street or whatever. It's just going to be too fucking much for them to cope. Now, do you think, Caroline, like that there'll be like a consciousness kind of tip in that kind of quantum monkey sense? Do you think if enough of us get it, then the rest of them will get it? I mean, I think there's some that, like NP, that they're never going to get it. Never going to get it, never going to get it, never going to get it. And it's like Westworld, isn't it, as well? That's a great kind of, I mean, I got bored after the first kind of series. I kind of nailed it down, really. But again, they're coming to this theme park and they're playing different characters all the time, aren't they? And then they all start to wake up to, hang on, I recognise you, and hang on. And then they all go off to try and find the architect of the place, and again, who is the architect of this place? I'm pretty damn sure it isn't the true creators, which is us, and I'd say the infinite creator. But do you think that it could tip like that? If enough of us get it, do you think the rest will?
I don't think it would happen in a dominoes type of fashion, because I think it inevitably depends on your capacity to process the information, because it's a very difficult thing to process. And I think, as you said, not everybody here is made of the same stuff. I think some people are literally matrix agents, and I don't mean that means they're doing bad stuff, but they're literally kind of padding out the whole game, so to speak. Those people, are they real people or not? I mean, I would say, yeah, you talk to anyone, yeah, they're people, but that divine spark is missing somehow. It's like it's not a
So
hierarchical
I'd
thing.
say,
Yeah, so that is not, you know, they're just not going to accept that. And I think the most that people would accept is that it's a simulation, because you've got the likes of Elon Musk and all those kind of transhumanism frontmen promoting the fact that it's a simulation. But that's just another strategy to divert you from your true power in the end. So it might be that people wake up to that degree because that's planned, and people tend to go along with that, don't they? But I think the ones who have actually done the healing work on the traumas, and then they know themselves, really know themselves, they've forgiven themselves, they've forgiven other people, and they have basically undone as much programming as is possible to do while in this kind of almost schizophrenic state of being human in a matrix. You know, as long as you kind of done that, I think people will do it. I don't know whether it would just be like a hundredth monkey thing. I like to think so. I hope so. And if there was any evidence of people actually kind of up in and leaving and going somewhere better, i.e. the pleroma or the fullness or wherever you want to go, I think people would follow suit without a problem. But without any actual evidence, most people seem to want hardcore evidence for stuff. You don't get that in this game. You just don't get
no.
that. So I'm aware that we're talking a lot here, and we're probably gonna be going on for hours if I know me and you, and we probably shouldn't do that. So I was thinking, just to mention some of the practices that for the people who do actually want to do that work on themselves, where they don't think that they're necessarily just going to exit on intention alone. I think you can exit on intention alone if you have enough gnosis that creates a powerful intent. You know, if you don't have that foundation of understanding, you're just making assumptions and hoping. So know thyself is the same as know thy programming. And if you can't do that, you're still in the grip of the matrix, and it won't change just because you die. So there are practices that can help with that kind of stuff. And I think especially relating to navigating outside of the body. So I've been doing like lucid dreaming practice. And it's not anything major, you know, there's plenty of books on it, like by Stephen LaBerge. But for me, even just by intending to do that, it's happened a few times in the last couple of weeks. I've had about 3 lucid dreams. So I know that the practices are helping. So what I do is I wake up in the morning, as soon as I wake up, I start writing a dream diary. I'll like mumble it all into my phone, and then later on I'll write it into a dream diary, and I'm kind of reliving it. And what that's doing is it's integrating the dream state as a memory rather than something you just let it go. You're kind of taking it seriously as if it's something that actually happened, and you're reliving it. And then your brain or your mind, whatever, starts to distinguish the two. Sorry, not distinguish, you know what I mean? It starts to kind of relate the two things, the two realities, as having equal weight, I think. So then it's easier for you to spot anomalies when you're asleep, and you suddenly, oh, this isn't likely to happen. Ah, I'm dreaming. And I've been able to control the dreams for a lot longer now. And it is, you know, it's a long-term practice. It's not something that you just get good at overnight, I don't think. But it's amazing. And to realize that you are actually functioning outside of your body with your own mind, and you can make things happen and go where you want, do what you want. It's like it's phenomenally empowering, because you realize that your consciousness does not need this body, and it can do any number of things that you can dream up. So that in itself is one of the most amazing practices. I've actually got a list, my little daily things to do. Obviously, I'm never going to do all these things in a day. But like energy clearing meditations is another one. I found some interesting ones on Cameron Day's website. I think it's called Ascension Help or something. And they're all there for free, so you can download those. Active imagination, Carl Jung's active imagination. I think meditation will take you so far, but it's actually not necessarily what works for everyone. And some people think can make you actually a bit complacent and not apathetic, but kind of. And active imagination for certain people, or maybe for everyone, who knows, is actually something that's tuning your mind to a different frequency and allowing you to create and take those things seriously. And a lot of people say things actually start to happen from them doing that. So you can just go on YouTube for that and just look up Active Imagination by Carl Jung, and you'll get like playlists full of guided stuff. So that's one thing you can start doing. Um, Maybe some holotropic breath work. You can find videos on that as well to follow along with. And that's basically kind of, I mean, not everyone probably should do that on their own, depending on what's happened with them. But like trauma release therapy is just a way to get out the somatic stuff, you know, the stuff that's stored in your body that's like creating illness, probably.
Yeah.
And that's a way of kind of lightening. It's what Howdy Mikoski again says: you're getting your house in order. You got to kind of keep the body in good shape as well, and the lifestyle and the habits have all got to go, like we said earlier. Howdy Mikoski talks about doing recapitulation, which is basically like a Toltec shamanism strategy for knowing yourself. I've started to do that, but I think some people naturally do it anyway, where you literally reflect on your entire life and you go through everything. I think in reverse order is the ideal way of doing it. It's what Carlos Castanedas talks about as well. I won't go on too much about it, but it is a way for you to kind of not be tricked anymore, because you know yourself so well that when you go out of body, you kind of indeceivable. Is that a word? I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, but basically, that's a really, really healthy thing to do for your own healing as well, because you start to reframe the experiences that you've had, things you did wrong. You're carrying guilt and shame. You carry any guilt and shame with you out of this world, that's exactly what they're going to use to try and make you come back in again. And if you're not really strong, really empowered, and really like your intent is extremely focused, you'll get tricked by something. You have to know yourself so well. And I think that's really, really important. It's one of the most important things. And then I'm kind of a bit in two minds about astral projection, because I think going into the astral realm seems to be something that the powers that be want you to do. It seems it's kind of promoted. They facilitate things with like the hemisync program, brainwaves, and all of that. I don't trust it. And I think it's kind of facilitating either changes in your brainwaves or programs in your brainwaves. I don't know exactly how they would do that because I don't know anything about the tech. But I think you've got to be very careful. You go out of that realm, you're basically exploring the area that is the worst, apparently, you know, the most separate from God. So
Oh, yeah.
really want to go through that when you could probably completely bypass that if you really had that awareness of what happens after death and where you could go and who you are. I mean, if that's where the study comes in and the gnosis comes in. You need to understand what's going to happen at the point of death, and don't assume you're going to have to go through the astral realm at all, or through the
Yeah.
tunnel of light, you know. But this, you know, there's so many ways to look at this, and people have got different ideas about the best way to get out and how simple it is or how difficult it is. But I think fundamentally it's better not to just assume that just thinking I know what's going on here and I've had enough of it, so I'm leaving, is enough. I think you really need to kind of clear your energies and be really,
Yeah.
really strong from a really, really good place, and then your intent will be enough. But
Yeah.
it's not as simple as that. It's simple on one hand, and it's not simple on another hand. And I think, like we were saying earlier, I think some people have kind of come back in here with that soul knowing to take this place apart. And if that's the case, well, wouldn't it be a shame if all of us just chipped off because we forgot that that's what we were doing, and we were like all the people who were the most powerful in their spirits and had, you know, best chance of like exposing all of this and creating this 100th monkey effect or whatever. If that does happen, if we all just left because we figured out how to leave, wouldn't that be awful? So it's kind of weighing up all of that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's that's why I love you to bits, my love. It's like you've spent a long time researching this and putting together and putting it into a meme as we do. And I think we were talking about that with Tony, and it's like you don't just come to this stuff overnight. It's a very long journey in it, and it's a dark one, a very dark one at times as well. And it
I can't
definitely
even
is
tell
not
you.
without, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Bible, basic instructions before leaving Earth. You know, it's a script. Scripture is a script. It's a code. It's a codification. And you know, I'm pretty convinced this is why they want, you know, our elders with dementia, with Alzheimer's, you know, having pain and suffering on death as much as possible, being sick, being ill, so that you're not in your right mind upon the exit, and you don't have that. You know, I suppose a lot of ancient cultures, you know, you talked of Carlo I can never say his name, Castaneda, is it
Carlos
Castaneda?
Castaneda.
That's him. And we had
Yeah.
Shaman Dave on the first series, and he was great, Shaman Dave. And again, he, you know, a lot of cultures speak of either Valhalla or, you know, it's, you have to kind of go out in a blaze of glory, hence my Billy the Kid, I suppose, but you have to know who you are, and you have to be like, you know, you have to say no to that thing, and you really do have to kind of, yeah, know thyself. It's the biggest one in scripture, know thyself, like, you know.
All there. If you know yourself, you can know other people as well. And that's when people do become very transparent in their idiosyncrasies and their biases and all of that. And that's when you lose the most friends, because you point it out and they don't like it. I'm just kidding. Well, I'm not kidding, actually. The more authentic you are, the
We're
more
still here.
fact. It is a fact.
Well, yeah,
But
you know, and like you say, we could sit here and talk here for hours and hours about this, and no doubt we will, you know, we'll be back, whether
yeah,
people enjoy it or they don't, you know, I don't know, there's something for me, like I said, I was having these epiphanies last night, but definitely were, yeah, I know what I'm here to do, and I want to break this motherfucking shit show down, really. And I would say if it's the last breath in my body, which it may well be, but
make an
so yeah,
excellent
man,
Viking, dear. An excellent
yeah,
Viking indeed. Yeah. But yeah, I think we should definitely have a conversation about some of the more metaphysical aspects that have come
yeah,
together to kind of create the understanding and the gnosis of this, because I think some of these experiences, although they're personal experiences, they will definitely resonate, because a lot of it for me has been visions and symbolic stuff and like really powerful downloads and things that I just know will resonate with the people who have kind of maybe been like I was and a bit confused about how to connect the dots and what things mean. It's the time for it now. One of my downloads was, or included, knowledge is fated. And I had to think about that. Knowledge is fated, because when it happened, didn't seem to kind of make too much sense, was a bit vague. But now I see that it was meant for the end times. It's like, it's gonna happen. This is the time. What you do with it is everything. So
yeah.
that's what you work out.
No, I
Well,
just said great. It's been a great chat.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Tony and Caroline. It's and this is it, you know, they're not popular thoughts, are they? And it's certainly with our algorithms and whatnot, but I definitely 100% believe, or I shouldn't say believe because there's a line belief, but I know that there is this reveal and it is coming. And like you said, Tony, with this, whatever this thing is, it's floundering. And like you say, from a psyop every 3 months, they're coming every day, and it's getting that silly, it's getting that ridiculous, because whatever that beast is, whatever that system is, it's losing its control, which is why it's flapping around so much. And so keep the faith, people, as I say, and it's keeping it real, isn't it? Like I say, it might not be palatable, you might not like it, do the inner work, man. And you know, it is what, you know, what's the famous adage, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. Because once, I think there's so much information, misinformation, and as Logan from Script to Reality would say, you know, it's kind of, you know, narratives can lie. So once you've kind of, you can use all that as a backdrop, but then that backdrop really is about, you know, that kind of internal alchemy, and doing right action, and being courageous, and like Tony does, speaking out, no matter what it kind of costs us, or all of us, you know. So those are my last thoughts. But thank you
I've got
so
one
much,
last
guys.
thought. I've got
Thank you
one
so
last
much.
thought on that one.
Oh, my love.
Just want to say, I wanted to mention this before, that one of the things that people are still doing is just, and it ties in with what you were just saying, looking for a savior. because and that is a trap that people are falling into. There's gatekeepers waiting at every level of awakening, and if we think that we've worked it all out, we've got the ultimate truth, and so we can just relax now, we can't be fooled anymore, people aren't deceiving us, well, we are going to be the ones who get it the worst at the final hour, because those gatekeepers are giving you 90% truth, maybe 95 and 5%, and they're going to swerve you right out of the game at the last minute. And just because you project all of your hopes and desires onto this person, oh, they've worked it out, they know what's going on, then you just take everything they say at face value, well, then you're fucked, you're coming back. It's that simple. You have got to turn to yourself as the main authority. If you put that on anyone else, expect anyone else to have all the answers for you, it's game over, and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
And we can't finish on a better note. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, guys, for coming, and thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Great to talk
Thank
to you.
you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.